Chapter 1. The Unexpected Encounter. Drake Solis was a technician aboard Solaris 5, one of humanity's most vital space stations stationed at the very edge of the explored galaxy. Unlike the glamorous lives of military officers or the thrilling experiences of interstellar explorers, Drake's job was simple but essential: maintenance, repairs, and diagnostics. The space station functioned as a refueling and trade hub, a critical asset to Earth's trade and defense network. For Drake, though, it was simply his home, and his days were filled with the regular grind of keeping everything running smoothly. Today seemed like no exception. It was a routine shift, and Drake had been dispatched on a simple maintenance mission to repair one of the solar panels damaged during a recent meteor storm. He was piloting his small, single-man shuttle just outside the station's perimeter, working in near silence except for the soft hum of his equipment and the distant flickers of starlight all around him. It was peaceful in the vacuum of space, a sense of solitude that Drake had come to enjoy. He liked the simplicity of his life. While others sought glory in the stars, he was content with ensuring that Solaris 5 remained operational. His world was one of machinery, circuits, and system updates, far removed from the grand political dealings and military skirmishes of the wider galaxy. That was until his shuttle's console began flashing with an unexpected emergency alert. The sharp sound of the alarm jolted Drake out of his relaxed state. His fingers instinctively moved to the control panel as a red light began flashing, signaling an incoming distress beacon. It wasn't from the station or any of the registered ships nearby. This was different, unfamiliar. "That's odd," Drake muttered under his breath as he examined the signal. It was weak, barely a blip on the radar, but it was coming from somewhere in the sector, close enough to warrant his attention. Curiosity piqued, he ran a quick scan of the area. The readings indicated a small vessel drifting aimlessly not too far from his current position. The ship's energy levels were critically low, and its communication systems appeared damaged. "Unknown vessel," Drake mumbled, narrowing his eyes at the readings. It didn't match any known ship designs he was familiar with, not human, not any of the standard merchant or trade ships that usually pass through. It was something else entirely. He hesitated for a moment, weighing his options. Protocol dictated that he should alert Solaris 5 immediately. A distress signal meant there could be survivors, and it was his duty to assist, but it was also his duty to avoid any unnecessary risks. With a deep breath, he reached for the comms. "Solaris 5, this is Shuttle 34, Drake said, his voice steady. "I've picked up a distress signal from an unknown vessel approximately 2 kilometers from my position, requesting guidance." The response came after a few moments, the familiar crackle of station control's voice filling his shuttle. "Shuttle 34, this is Solaris 5 control. Proceed with caution. We're not picking up any life signs from that vessel, but be prepared for anything. Maintain communications and report any anomalies." "Understood," Drake replied. He steered his shuttle toward the ship, the distance between them closing rapidly as his engines roared to life. The vessel came into view shortly after, and Drake's breath caught in his throat at the sight. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, a sleek, angular design, almost organic in appearance. The outer hull shimmered in the light of distant stars, though deep gashes and scorched marks marred its surface. It had been through something violent, perhaps a battle, but it was difficult to tell. Drake's heart raced as he approached, his fingers tapping out commands to align his shuttle with the ship's airlock. With a soft hiss, the docking mechanism engaged, and a series of green lights on his console confirmed a successful connection. Taking a deep breath, Drake strapped on his emergency respirator and grabbed his toolkit. He had no idea what he would find inside, but he couldn't ignore the call for help. As the airlock doors slid open, he stepped inside the ship, his boots echoing against the sleek, metallic floor. The interior was dimly lit, with flickering lights casting long shadows across the corridors. The air was heavy with the scent of burnt electronics and something else, something unfamiliar. The ship systems were barely functioning, and the low hum of life support thrummed weakly in the background. "Hello?" Drake called out, his voice barely above a whisper as he moved deeper into the vessel. There was no response, only the distant crackle of failing equipment. His heart pounded in his chest as he rounded a corner, and that's when he saw her. Slumped over in the pilot's chair was a figure unlike any he had ever encountered. She was tall, her body adorned in what looked like an elaborate, regal robe made of shimmering, iridescent fabric. Her skin was a deep violet hue, smooth and unblemished, and her long, silver hair cascaded over her shoulders like liquid moonlight. Even in her unconscious state, there was something majestic about her. Drake's breath caught in his throat. Whoever she wasn't just any traveler. This was someone important. He rushed to her side, kneeling beside her and gently pressing 2 fingers to her neck. Her pulse was weak but steady. She was alive, though barely. He leaned in closer, examining her for any visible injuries. "Hey," Drake whispered, his voice soft as he gently shook her shoulder. "Are you okay? Can you hear me?" For a moment, there was nothing, but then her eyes fluttered open. They were a striking shade of violet, matching her skin, and they locked onto Drake with a mixture of confusion and pain. Who are you?" she whispered, her voice weak but melodic. "I'm Drake," he replied, trying to keep his voice calm and steady. "I'm a technician from Solaris 5. I found your distress signal and came to help." Her gaze remained fixed on him, as if she were struggling to comprehend what was happening. Then, her expression shifted slightly, and her eyes widened with a faint recognition. "I am Princess Talia of the Zenari Empire," she said, her voice still weak but growing stronger with each word. You saved me." Drake blinked in surprise. The Zenari Empire was one of the most powerful and mysterious factions in the galaxy. They were rarely seen beyond their borders, and rumors of their advanced technology and ancient lineage circulated in hushed whispers across the stars. To think that he had stumbled upon one of their princesses. "I didn't realize," Drake muttered, feeling the weight of the situation sink in. "Are you all right? You're injured, but I think we can get you back to my station for medical care." Talia winced as she shifted in her seat, her hand reaching up to touch her temple. "There is no time," she said, her voice urgent. We must leave. They will come for me." Drake's heart skipped a beat. "Who will come for you?" Her eyes darkened, filled with fear and determination. "The ones who attacked my ship. They will stop at nothing to find me. And if they do, they will not leave survivors." Drake swallowed hard. He wasn't trained for this. He was a technician, not a soldier. But he couldn't just leave her here, not after what she had been through. "All right," he said, his voice firm with resolve. "Let's get you out of here." Without another word, Drake carefully lifted Talia from the pilot's chair, her weight surprisingly light in his arms. He carried her back through the corridors of the damaged ship, his mind racing with questions. Who had attacked her? Why? And what had he just gotten himself into? The airlock hissed closed behind them as he laid Talia gently into one of the shuttle's seats, strapping her in securely. As he returned to the pilot's chair, he could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He powered up the engines and set a course back to Solaris 5, but deep down, he knew that whatever had started here was far from over. This was only the beginning. As the shuttle sped away from the wrecked vessel, Drake glanced back at Talia. She was unconscious again, her breathing shallow but steady. He didn't know what kind of danger they were in, but one thing was clear. He had just become part of something much bigger than himself. Chapter 2. Royal Secrets and Galactic Shadows. Drake couldn't shake the sense of impending danger as he piloted the shuttle back to Solaris 5. The sleek craft hummed softly, the cold void of space outside serene, but his mind was anything but calm. He glanced back at Princess Talia, who remained unconscious in the seat behind him, her violet skin faintly glowing in the low light of the shuttle's interior. The name, Zenari Empire, echoed in his mind. Stories of the Zenari were rare, but always carried an air of awe and mystery. They were an ancient and powerful race, known for their advanced technology and reclusive nature. Few had ever met a Zenari in person, let alone one of royal blood. What was a princess of such a mighty empire doing in a damaged ship so far from her home? And who had attacked her? As Solaris 5 came into view, Drake's console lit up with an incoming transmission. The voice of Commander Willis, the station's security chief, crackled through the comms. "Shuttle 34, this is Solaris 5 control. We're receiving your signal. Do you require medical assistance upon landing?" Drake hesitated before responding. "Yeah, Commander. I found a survivor. She's in rough shape, but stable for now. We'll need medical on standby when we dock." There was a brief pause, And then Willis's gruff voice came back, a hint of curiosity in his tone. "Copy that, Shuttle 34. We'll have a team ready. Welcome back." Drake exhaled slowly as he guided the shuttle into the station's docking bay. The familiar sights of Solaris 5's interior greeted him as the craft settled onto the landing pad. The docking clamps engaged with a soft thud, and the shuttle door slid open with a hiss. A team of medics was already waiting, rushing forward as soon as the airlock was sealed. They carefully lifted Princess Talia onto a hovering stretcher, her body still limp and unconscious. Drake followed closely behind, his mind spinning with 1,000 questions. As they hurried toward the medical bay, he caught sight of Commander Willis striding toward them. The commander was a tall, imposing figure, his salt and pepper beard giving him the look of a seasoned warrior who had seen his fair share of combat. His eyes, sharp and calculating, took in the sight of the unconscious princess with a mixture of concern and suspicion. "So this is your survivor?" Willis asked, his tone gruff as he fell into step beside Drake. "Yeah," Drake replied, his voice low. "She says she's Princess Talia of the Zenari Empire." Willis raised an eyebrow, his gaze flickering between Drake and the medics carrying the princess. "A Zenari princess? You sure about that, Solis?" "She told me herself," Drake said, his brow furrowed. "Her ship was a wreck. She was barely conscious when I found her, but she said she was attacked. Whoever did this, they're still out there." The commander's expression darkened. "We'll have to get to the bottom of this. The Zenari Empire doesn't exactly make many friends out here, and if someone's bold enough to attack one of their royals, it could spell trouble for all of us." As they reached the medical bay, the medics began working swiftly to stabilize Talia, attaching monitors and administering treatments that would help her body recover from the trauma. Drake stood by the door, watching anxiously as the machines hummed and beeped. He couldn't shake the feeling that something far bigger was in motion, something that went beyond just a damaged ship and an injured princess. "Commander," one of the medics called out, "she's stabilizing, but she'll need a few hours before she's fully conscious. We've never treated a Zenari before, but her physiology isn't too different from most humanoid species." Willis nodded, then turned to Drake. "Looks like she'll make it. Good work bringing her in." Drake crossed his arms, the tension still gnawing at him. "Commander, what if the people who attacked her come looking? We don't know who they are, or what they want. We could be sitting ducks." Willis grunted, his eyes narrowing. "You let me worry about that, Solis. Our first priority is keeping her safe and figuring out what the hell happened out there. You, however, have done your part. Get some rest, and leave the rest to station security." Drake wanted to argue, but he knew there was little he could do at this point. As much as he wanted answers, the chain of command was clear. He was just a technician, this was beyond his expertise. Still, as he left the medical bay and returned to his quarters, the unease wouldn't leave him. He lay down on his small cot, staring up at the ceiling, his mind racing with possibilities. Why had Talia been alone? Who could have attacked a princess of such a powerful empire, and for what reason? Hours passed, and sleep eluded him. Finally, he decided to return to the medical bay, unable to shake the need to check on her again. As he approached, he was surprised to find the room dimly lit, with only one medic present, monitoring the machines. Princess Talia was still unconscious, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Drake leaned against the wall, his gaze fixed on her. There was something about her presence that felt larger than life, even in this fragile state. He couldn't help but wonder what it must be like to carry the weight of an entire empire on your shoulders. Suddenly, her eyes fluttered open. Drake straightened immediately, his heart pounding. He hadn't expected her to wake so soon. Her violet eyes, shimmering with an ethereal glow, locked onto him. "You!" she murmured weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. Drake stepped closer, his voice soft but urgent. "Princess Talia, you're safe now. You're on Solaris 5. We're taking care of you." Talia blinked slowly, as if trying to make sense of her surroundings. Her gaze remained on Drake, and for a moment, there was silence between them. Then, her hand twitched, and she tried to sit up, but the weakness in her body stopped her. "Don't try to move," Drake said quickly. "You've been through a lot. Just rest." Talia shook her head weakly, her expression filled with frustration. No, there is no time for rest. I must warn you. Warn me? Drake frowned, leaning in closer. About what? Her eyes darkened, a flicker of fear passing through them. They will come. For me. And for you. If they know I'm here. We are all in danger. Drake's heart skipped a beat. Who's coming? Who attacked you? Talia's breathing became more labored as she struggled to speak. The syndicate. They want what I carry. If they find it, it will be the end of us all. Drake's mind raced. The syndicate? He had heard of them, a ruthless criminal organization that operated in the darker corners of the galaxy. But what could they possibly want with the Zenari princess? And what was it that she carried? Before Drake could ask more, the door to the medical bay slid open, and Commander Willis stepped inside. His eyes immediately locked onto Talia, and he approached with a sense of urgency. She's awake? Willis asked, his tone sharp. Drake nodded. She mentioned something about the syndicate. She said we're all in danger. Willis's expression darkened further. Then we've got a bigger problem than we thought. He turned to Talia, his voice firm but respectful. Princess Talia, I'm Commander Willis, head of security here on Solaris 5. We'll do everything we can to protect you, but we need to know exactly what we're dealing with. What is it that the syndicate wants? What are they after? Talia's eyes flickered with pain and exhaustion, but there was a steely resolve in her voice as she answered. They are after the key of Saradis, an artifact of immense power. If they obtain it, the balance of power in the galaxy will shift, the Zenari Empire will fall, and the syndicate will rise. Drake's blood ran cold. An artifact of power? The fate of the galaxy in the balance? This was far beyond anything he had ever imagined. And now, without realizing it, he had become entangled in a web of danger and intrigue that stretched far beyond Solaris 5. Willis's jaw tightened. We need to move quickly. If the syndicate knows she's here, it won't be long before they come knocking. Solis, you brought her in, so you're part of this now. Stay close. Things are about to get real complicated. Drake swallowed hard, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had saved a princess, but in doing so, he had unwittingly placed himself and the entire station in the crosshairs of a galactic war. Chapter 3. The Artifact of Saradis. Drake stood frozen for a moment, his mind reeling. The words Princess Talia had spoken, key of Saradis, echoed in his thoughts. An artifact of immense power, coveted by a shadowy organization like the Syndicate, and now, somehow, he was involved in it all. He was just a technician, a man whose days were spent fixing machinery and ensuring that Solaris 5 functioned smoothly. He had never sought out danger, nor had he ever expected to be pulled into the orbit of galactic politics and intrigue. Yet here he was, standing next to an alien princess who held the key literally to the fate of the galaxy. Commander Willis, meanwhile, was already thinking 2 steps ahead, as always. He turned sharply to the 2 medics who were still present, their faces a mask of concern and confusion. Clear the room, Willis ordered. This conversation stays classified. No one else needs to know about the princess's presence or what she's told us. Understood? The medics nodded and swiftly exited the medical bay, leaving only Drake, Willis, and Princess Talia in the room. The dim lighting cast long shadows on the walls, adding to the weight of the moment. Willis turned back to Talia, his expression hard. We need details, Princess. If the Syndicate is after you, then it's only a matter of time before they come looking. Solaris 5 isn't equipped to handle a full-scale attack, especially not from an organization like the Syndicate. What exactly is this key of Saradis, and why does the Syndicate want it so badly? Talia, still pale and visibly weak, struggled to sit up, her regal posture unbroken despite her injuries. Drake stepped forward to help, gently lifting her into a more comfortable position. She gave him a faint smile of gratitude before turning her attention back to Willis. The key of Saradis is an ancient artifact, she began, her voice soft but carrying the weight of millennia. It was created by the ancients, a civilization long gone but whose remnants still linger throughout the galaxy. The key is said to be a source of unimaginable power capable of unlocking technologies and energies that have been hidden for eons. Whoever controls the key controls the future. Drake's eyes widened. It sounded like something out of a myth, a legend told by old spacefarers to scare young recruits. But this wasn't a story. This was real, and it was happening right in front of him. Willis remained skeptical, though his eyes never left Talia. And you have this key? Talia shook her head slowly. Not exactly. The key is not an object that can be carried. It's a map-a set of coordinates scattered across the galaxy, hidden in ancient ruins. The pieces of the map must be brought together to reveal the location of the true key. My family, my empire. We've been the protectors of one of these pieces for generations. But now, the Syndicate has learned of its existence. Drake shifted uneasily. This was getting more complicated by the second. So the Syndicate wants to gather all the pieces of the map? And if they do? Talia's eyes darkened. If they do, they will have the power to reshape the galaxy in their image. The Zenari Empire would fall, and countless other civilizations would be subjugated or destroyed. The Syndicate has no honor. They only seek control, and they will stop at nothing to achieve it. Willis rubbed his chin, clearly processing the gravity of the situation. And you believe they're coming here? To Solaris 5? Talia nodded. They attacked my ship when I refused to hand over my piece of the map. I managed to escape, but only barely. I believe they're tracking me. It won't be long before they find out I'm here. Drake felt a cold pit form in his stomach. Solaris 5 was a small station, not a fortress. They had security forces, but nothing that could withstand a concerted attack by a group as powerful as the Syndicate. The station was designed for commerce and refueling, not for war. So what do we do? Drake asked, looking between Willis and Talia. We can't let the Syndicate get their hands on that map, but we can't exactly fight them off either. Willis was already formulating a plan, his military mind working rapidly. We won't need to fight them off if we aren't here when they arrive. We need to evacuate the princess and her piece of the map before they get to Solaris 5. If we can get her to a secure location, somewhere deep within Zenari space, she'll be safe, and we can buy ourselves some time. Drake frowned. But they know she's here, or they will soon enough. How do we get her out without them noticing? Willis gave a grim smile. That's where you come in, Solis. Drake blinked. Me? You brought her in, Willis said, his voice steady. You're the one they won't be expecting to make a move. You're not a soldier, not an officer. To them, you're just a technician, a nobody. We'll use that to our advantage. You'll take the princess and get her off station, while I stay behind and create a distraction. Drake's heart raced. Wait, are you saying you want me to smuggle a Zenari princess out of here right under the Syndicate's nose? In my shuttle? I'm not a spy or an operative. I don't even know how to handle Dash. You're the best shot we've got. Willis cut him off. They'll be watching for official channels, scanning for military craft. But they won't expect a simple repair shuttle to be carrying one of the most valuable people in the galaxy. You know this station's layout better than anyone, and you've proven you can keep your cool under pressure. Drake swallowed hard. The weight of the situation was pressing down on him, suffocating in its intensity. He had spent his entire life avoiding danger, living in the shadow of the heroes and adventurers who fought the galaxy's battles. But now, it seemed, fate had other plans for him. Talia's voice broke through his thoughts, soft but filled with determination. Drake Solis, you have already saved my life once. Now, I ask you to save me again. I cannot do this alone, and if the Syndicate obtains the key, millions will suffer. Will you help me? Drake met her gaze, his mind racing. He saw the fear in her eyes, but also something more: trust. She believed in him, in his ability to help her escape. Despite everything, she believed he could be more than just a technician. He took a deep breath, then nodded. I'll do it. I'll get you out of here. Willis clapped him on the shoulder. Good man. I'll work with my team to create a diversion. You'll need to move fast and stay off the main channels. Once you're off the station, you'll have to head to these coordinates. He handed Drake a data chip. It's a remote outpost, one of the Zenari's old diplomatic stations. It's off the Syndicate's radar and well hidden. From there, you can arrange transport back to Zenari space. Talia gave Drake a grateful nod, though her expression remained serious. Time is of the essence. We must leave immediately, before the Syndicate realizes we're on the move. Drake felt the weight of the task ahead of him settle heavily on his shoulders. He wasn't ready for this. He wasn't a hero or a soldier. But there was no turning back now. He had chosen his path, and it led straight into the heart of danger. As the medics finished their final checks, ensuring that Talia was stable enough to travel, Drake prepared himself mentally for what was to come. He would be smuggling a princess out of one of the most heavily trafficked stations in the sector, all while under the watchful eye of one of the galaxy's deadliest criminal organizations. The doors to the medical bay slid open once again, and this time it wasn't just Willis standing there. A squad of station security personnel had arrived, ready to assist with the plan. They nodded to Willis, acknowledging the seriousness of the situation. Willis looked at Drake one last time. "Solis, stay sharp. You're not just a technician anymore, you're playing a critical role in keeping the balance of power in this galaxy in check. Don't let the Syndicate take that map." Drake nodded, his stomach churning with anxiety, but his resolve firming. "I'll get her out, Commander. You can count on me." As they moved through the halls of Solaris 5, heading for Drake's shuttle in the docking bay, he could feel the tension rising. The station was quiet, but it wouldn't stay that way for long. The Syndicate would be coming, and they wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. Drake glanced over at Talia, who walked beside him with her regal grace. She was still weak, but there was an undeniable strength in her presence, a strength that Drake would need to draw on in the coming hours. "Are you ready?" he asked her quietly as they approached the shuttle. Talia looked at him, her violet eyes filled with a calm determination. "I am. Let's begin." And so, with the weight of the galaxy's future resting on their shoulders, they prepared to embark on the most dangerous journey of their lives. Chapter 4. The Chase Through the Stars. The shuttle's engines hummed softly as Drake ran through the pre-flight checks. His hands moved automatically, flipping switches and adjusting controls, but his mind was a whirlwind of anxiety. He had smuggled cargo before: spare parts, food rations, the occasional contraband, but never a living person. And certainly never a royal heir to an empire, let alone one being hunted by one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the galaxy. Princess Talia sat in the co-pilot's seat, her posture regal even in her weakened state. She was watching him intently, her violet eyes glowing faintly in the dim light of the shuttle's cockpit. Her presence was both calming and unnerving, calming because of her grace, unnerving because of the immense weight of responsibility she represented. "You're sure you can fly this thing unnoticed?" Talia asked, her voice quiet but firm. Drake nodded, not trusting his voice for a moment. His mind raced over everything Commander Willis had told him. He would have to fly the shuttle out of Solaris 5 without raising any alarms, stay off the radar, and navigate a path to the remote Zenari outpost. And all of this while dodging whatever agents of the Syndicate might be on their tail. The thought of the Syndicate sent a shiver down his spine. They were more than just a criminal organization. They were a shadowy network that spanned multiple systems, infiltrating governments, businesses, and militaries. Their reach was vast, and their ruthlessness legendary. If they were after Talia and the key of Saradis, they wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. He glanced over at her. Despite her calm demeanor, he could see the tension in her posture, the slight tremor in her hands. She was under as much pressure as he was, if not more. Her entire empire was at stake, and now, for reasons neither of them could fully understand, their fates were intertwined. Drake took a deep breath, steeling himself. "We'll make it," he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "This shuttle's small and unassuming. They won't expect us to slip out quietly." Talia gave him a small nod, though her eyes remained serious. "I trust you, Drake Solis. We must move quickly before they catch wind of our escape." Drake exhaled slowly, his fingers tightening around the controls. "Hold on. We're taking off." With a flick of a switch, the shuttle's thrusters ignited, and they began to rise gently from the docking bay floor. Drake kept the maneuver smooth and steady, doing everything he could to make their departure look as routine as possible. The last thing they needed was to attract attention. As they cleared the station's outer docks, Drake adjusted the shuttle's course, guiding them toward one of the station's service lanes. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest as they moved into open space, leaving Solaris 5 behind. So far, everything seemed normal. No alarms, no security warnings. They were in the clear for now. Talia leaned forward slightly, her eyes scanning the stars outside the viewport. "You're sure they won't detect us?" "I've rerouted our transponder signal to mimic a maintenance drone," Drake replied, his voice tense. "We'll look like nothing more than a small repair shuttle going about its business. As long as we stay on this course and don't do anything suspicious, we should slip past any scans." He was trying to convince himself as much as her. Every second that ticked by felt like a countdown to disaster. He had to stay focused, no mistakes, no second-guessing. This wasn't just about him anymore. The shuttle continued its steady path away from Solaris 5, the station growing smaller in the distance. The stars around them twinkled softly, the vastness of space stretching out in all directions. But Drake knew better than to be lulled into a false sense of security. The Syndicate was out there, and they wouldn't give up easily. After what felt like an eternity, Drake finally allowed himself to relax slightly. They were now far enough from the station that any casual observer wouldn't take notice. He adjusted the shuttle's heading, setting a course for the coordinates Willis had given him, the remote Zenari outpost. "How far is the outpost?" Talia asked, her voice breaking the tense silence. "About 3 hours at our current speed," Drake replied, glancing at the navigation screen. "It's in a pretty isolated sector. We should be able to get there without any problems." Talia leaned back in her seat, her expression pensive. "You're taking a great risk to help me, Drake Solis. I won't forget it." Drake shrugged, trying to downplay the gravity of the situation. "It's not like I had much of a choice, did I? Once I pulled you out of that wreck, I was already involved. Besides, I couldn't just leave you to the Syndicate." A faint smile touched Talia's lips, though there was a sadness in her eyes. "Few would have done what you did. The galaxy is full of people who care only for themselves. But you have a good heart." Drake didn't know how to respond to that. He had never thought of himself as particularly heroic. He was just a guy trying to make a living, doing his best to stay out of trouble. Yet here he was, helping a princess escape a galactic crime syndicate, with the fate of countless lives hanging in the balance. As the silence stretched between them, a soft beep from the console caught Drake's attention. His heart sank as he glanced at the radar screen. "We've got company," he muttered. Talia's eyes snapped to the screen, her expression immediately tense. The Syndicate? Drake couldn't be sure, but the readings were suspicious. A small cluster of ships had just entered the sector behind them, moving fast. Too fast for a routine patrol or trade convoy. And they were on a direct course for Solaris 5. "I don't like this," Drake said, his fingers tightening around the controls. "They're coming in hot. We might have to dash." Before he could finish his sentence, a warning alert blared through the cockpit. The ships had locked onto them. "They've spotted us," Talia said, her voice calm but laced with urgency. "They know we're here." Drake's mind raced. There was no way they could outrun a squadron of Syndicate ships, not in this slow-moving shuttle. His only hope was to outmaneuver them long enough to find cover or reach the outpost. "Hang on!" he shouted as he jerked the controls to the left, sending the shuttle into a sharp turn. The stars outside the viewport blurred as they veered off course, heading toward a nearby asteroid field. Talia gripped the armrests of her seat, her violet eyes focused and alert. "What's your plan?" "Improvise," Drake muttered through gritted teeth. He knew it wasn't much of a plan, but it was all they had. If they could lose the Syndicate ships in the asteroid field, they might have a chance of slipping away unnoticed. The shuttle sped toward the asteroid field, the massive rocks looming ahead like floating mountains. Drake could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins as he weaved the shuttle through the dense cluster of debris. The Syndicate ships followed close behind, their lasers firing in bursts, narrowly missing the shuttle's hull. "They're not giving up," Talia said, her voice calm but edged with tension. "Yeah, I noticed," Drake replied, his hands flying over the controls as he dodged another blast. He had to think fast. The shuttle wasn't built for combat, and their chances of surviving a direct hit were slim. But the asteroids might provide enough cover to buy them some time. He spotted a large asteroid ahead, its surface pockmarked with craters and fissures. With a sharp turn, he steered the shuttle into one of the deeper craters, hiding them from view for a moment. "Hold on," Drake said as he cut the engines, letting the shuttle drift silently into the shadows of the asteroid. For a few agonizing moments, there was silence. The radar still showed the Syndicate ships circling the area, but they hadn't found them yet. Drake held his breath, his fingers hovering over the controls, ready to move at a moment's notice. Talia sat perfectly still beside him, her eyes closed in concentration. She was a picture of calm, but Drake could feel the tension radiating off her. She was waiting, just like he was, for the moment when they would have to make their move. Minutes passed, each one feeling like an eternity. The Syndicate ships continued to search the area, but the asteroid field was dense, and their sensors were likely being disrupted by the debris. Finally, after what felt like hours, the radar blips began to move away. The Syndicate ships were pulling back, presumably convinced that their target had escaped. Drake let out a long, shaky breath. Looks like they're giving up. Talia opened her eyes and gave him a small nod. You did well, Drake Solis. He allowed himself a moment of relief, but he knew they weren't out of the woods yet. The Syndicate might have lost them for now, but they would be back. They still had to reach the Zenari outpost and deliver Talia to safety. We're not out of this yet, Drake said as he re-engaged the engines. But at least we bought ourselves some time. Talia's gaze softened as she looked at him.